Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 21 in the book of Romans. I'm going to title today, The Promise is a Person. And the reason we need to talk about this is that in Romans chapter 4, in the context of Abraham, this is going to come up, 5 or 6 times, where God refers to the promise. So we're in this passage where God is doing some bad math, all in our favor, that God doesn't count David's sin, so he has this error of subtraction, a good error, and then God counts Abraham's faith as righteousness. So God errors in an addition sort of a way. And we have Abraham believing God, and it's going to count to him as righteousness. And this refers back to a passage back in Genesis chapter 15, where God is making a promise to Abraham. So Abraham is the father of all who believe, and he's the father of all who believe that are circumcised, and the father of all who believe who aren't circumcised. And so the call that Paul is saying, walk in the footsteps of faith that Abraham had. So in one sense, Abraham gets smaller, but the faith that he has, and specifically the faith in the promise, gets bigger. The law certainly gets smaller because that's only going to bring wrath. We don't want to go there. We kind of want to do anything but that. But the faith, the dependency, the trust in the faith is in this promise. So we need to study a little bit about the promise. So God doesn't count sin. That's good. He forgets it, and he has mercy in that sense. And then God does count righteousness of another, and God in this way miscounts in both ways. So Abraham is the father not of the external, but the internal, the faithful. And that's why Paul's referring to it, because he's claiming that for all people who believe here now. So let's read. This is from Abraham, from Romans chapter 4. It's about Abraham. I'm going to start in verse 13 that we did yesterday. For the promise to Abraham and his offspring is that he would be heir of the world. And it did not come through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. So here, the promise to Abraham, that's what we got to study here today. For if it is the adherents of the law who are heirs, faith is null, and the promise to Abraham, is void. For the law brings wrath, that is, it gets God fired up. But where there is no law, there is no transgression. That is why it depends on faith, in order that, here it is again, the promise may rest on grace and be guaranteed to all his offspring, not only to the adherent of the law, but also to the one who shares the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. So I just want to go back and just review, what is the promise to Abraham? What was it that God promised to Abraham? Now, the primary thing that I want to say, the promise is the person. And in Genesis 15:1, and this is what Abraham is going to believe the Lord, and it's going to be counted to him as righteousness over, but this is the primary promise to Abraham, is that God promises himself. Abraham has just got done rescuing Lot and giving a tithe to Melchizedek. He says, I don't want the spoils of the war, of this battle. And God says to him, after these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Fear not, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. And what he's saying here, I think, is that Abram, you get me. I am your reward. I am your inheritance. You get primarily the covenant with Abraham, even though the covenant involves land and future generations, but primarily what you get, Mr. Abram, is you get me. And it is this that Abraham believed, and it counted to him as righteousness. And then God says, oh, and by the way, let me tell you that this same intimacy, the same relationship, the same personal relationship that I'm giving to you, I'm going to give to your heirs, to your sons and sons and sons and daughters and daughters and daughters, to everybody. So, what is the Abrahamic covenant? In my opinion, the Abrahamic covenant is first and primarily a person. That is a relationship with the Lord. Now, it's also a place, so he does offer a land, and it does offer a people. So, the people that reproduce the same process, this one on one, intimate, ongoing relationship with the Lord, those are his spiritual offspring. Those are the people of God. And Paul now is including not just the Jews into that group. It's for everybody. Genesis 17 chapter or verse 1 says, when Abraham was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless, that I may make my covenant between me and you, comma, and may multiply you greatly. And Abraham fell on his face. And then I like this in verse 5. It says, no longer shall your name be called Abram, which means exalted father, but your name shall be Abraham, which is the father of a multitude. For I will make you the father of a multitude of nations. And now Paul is saying, well, who are those nations? Who are the people of God now? It's everybody that does what Abraham did primarily, which is have a personal relationship, has a relationship with a person. He gets this promise. So what is when Romans chapter 4 refers to the promise, what he's referring to primarily is a person. The promise is God himself. It's God that says, I'm giving you myself. I am going to be your reward. I am going to be your inheritance. So in a sense, it's to be God's plus one. So God plus one is kind of the Abrahamic covenant. Now, if you multiply that, if you reproduce that God plus one in another person, and then in another person, and then in another person, well, then you make a nation. Then you make a people of God. But they're all people who did the essence first, which is believing that I am your shield and your reward will be very great. So what is the promise? The promise is primarily a person. So my encouragement today is go and be God's plus one, just like Abraham did. Do it by faith, do it by belief, do it by trust. Thanks for listening.